Now we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what Indians are all about.
I still say we Indian people are believers in the truth. This is the way of life that was given to your people. You're born an Indian, you're going to die an Indian. Indianness is a good life. You're facing an Indian this afternoon.
This week on Muskogee Vision, Principal Chief James Floyd spoke with Darren DeLon on Muskogee Radio about his decision not to seek re-election. To hear the whole hour-long interview, go to the Muskogee Radio YouTube channel. And thanks for watching Muskogee Vision.
Chief, a lot of things have been happening, especially in the last couple of months. And one thing I was wanting to bring up was the Oklahoma City Charter. Could you give us like a start of events, what began, if you're allowed to talk about that, and then also what made you have to pull the OKC's charter?
Okay. So the Oklahoma City Muskogee Association is like any other chartered community, except they're outside of our boundaries. They were housed in a building that the tribe owns, and so the issue really became one of compliance with auditing. And so when we had a year that we didn't have an audit, and then we extended time, and I think in December they sent me a letter, wanted an extension of time. We gave them 90 days, and then we got the information when we couldn't really put together an audit. That's a huge red flag for us. And then so as we began to dig a little deeper, it became apparent that we had significant issues there, such that I had to issue a proclamation and revoke their charter. And it's a balance, I guess, for any community. I think I've only done that for two others and over the 4 years, and Oklahoma City was the third, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that the citizens can still access the building, still hold events there. At the same time, you've got to go in and look at what led up to the situation that you had. They were also unique in that the council had loaned them some money for a business or several businesses, and so those things are still being sorted out. At this time, we have somebody up there 3 days a week to take care of any of the citizen needs, and also the flexibility to bring people down here if we need to for services, and then also making sure that we continue to have the building available for the events that people had paid in advance for. The next step for us is to make sure that they, review their constitution and revise it as needed, have an election again, have new officers in place, and then work with community research and development to get reset so they can be successful, and then I can then put them back into active status again.
Is there a timeline for things like that to happen? I mean, with I'm not saying that they can happen like right away, but like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or into the months and months and months.
Well, under the community charter legislation, they have an election, you get notice, and then you have a committee that will review the Constitution. There's some time limits on that, but we're probably more than 6 months in, like in the fall, and we don't have anything yet. So I'd like to say within 6 months we can turn that around, but I'm not sure. I'm hopeful, but it may take longer than that. I hope it's before the beginning of the calendar year.
When you're saying that the red flags came up on the auditing, did it show? Was there any wrongdoing fiscally? With the money, was that it, or?
Well, it's the documentation needed to back up expenditures. You've got to have that, and every community knows the rules, how we go about being accountable for the money that's given to them to operate on. And when you have lack of that evidence, then it really gets concerning, because I'm responsible for that. And so at some point you just have to take action, and we felt we were there.
So you say currently there's somebody up there 3 days a week.
We have someone 3 days a week there.
And no, right now there's no meetings or anything like that because there's no officers.
Right, the officers were kind of summarily dismissed when I
Yeah.
did the proclamation, so we don't have officers. With Oklahoma City, it's unique in that they're limited liability corporations under the state of Oklahoma. I think they have 3. So, they have requirements to meet with the state, and so as an LLC, I'm not sure that, they're out of business. They could be operating somewhere else and continue with that. It's just that they won't have access to the tribal funds.
Has any of the community members reached out to you that belong to the Oklahoma City community? And if so, how's their feedback towards what's been going on?
Well, immediately, some of them were saying, well, what about the building we reserved for events? They contacted me about that. So I think the immediate concern was so much that, was about them already paying, reserving, and everything. So we made sure that we could meet those commitments that had already been made. Others were, in their opinions, glad to see it be done, or it's not time, or why'd you do it? Just different things like that. So it's kind of been all over the place, I guess, with different issues that people have.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving us an update with what's going on with Oklahoma City community. We're going to change course real quick. 2019, it is election year, and one person that's not going to be running for or running in the election is you.
My name won't be on the ballot, that's for sure.
Could you? I know you made they had a press release about that, about your decision. Was it an overnight decision? Was it a back and forth decision? What made you not want to seek re-election?
It was not an overnight decision, and and I have kind of a fairly large family, and we kind of operate like a democracy. So you get input from different family members, and they were mixed. Some very much supportive, continue to do what you're doing, and others saying, well, we'd like to have some of your time as well, and then with my immediate family, just recognizing things that we really need to be doing as a family that just really, in the last 4 years, have just been kind of put to the side. So it wasn't overnight. It wasn't easy, but in some ways it was fairly straightforward when you really started looking at things within our family that we really wanted to do and spend time with family members, children, and my mom and others that we just haven't had time for. And so we knew that we had to look forward. So in 4 years, if we made the decision to continue to do the job I'm in right now, what could take place that we may regret? And so when you start adding those things up, that gosh, we don't want to be in a position of regretting not spending time with family. And so that really made it a simple decision that we really needed to make sure that if we're going to say families come first, then we got to be able to do that. And so that's what drove the decision.
So with being able to hear everybody's input, with this decision making, in the end, it all just comes down to you. Like whenever you made that decision, like I'm not going to go ahead and put my name on the ballot. Did the realization of that hit that whenever you saw the press release or anything like that?
What it did for me, I guess I'm more kind of practical in things, is then I knew, okay, now I need to focus or refocus on things that I really need to get completed, because I thought, there's not much time remaining. So you got to make sure, I need to make sure that the things that are important and priorities of the nation, I need to devote all my time on. So that was like a turning point. Okay, that's done. So now go back to work, and what do you really need to do, and what effort do you need to expend, or which more effort do you need to give? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like 6 months and counting. There's some things that really need to be done, and so I better get busy. Busier.
Yeah. Was it like a shock with friends? I mean, I know you said you just dealt with it with family, but with friends, like seeing that press release, were they kind of like caught off guard, or were they they say, "Hey, Chief Floyd, you got some explaining to do."
Well,
You know, was
it may have
like
been a
that?
surprise because we had held that decision pretty close to the vest. And that's kind of keeping my family kind of private in some ways, and so that's what we did. And so, yeah, there were probably some surprise. You know, I'm not a social media buff, so I don't have any time to, be there on social media. So I don't really know. My gauge is not very good in that regard because I just don't have the time for that, and so I'm not sure what the buzz is on social media.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you have a little bit of time left during your term, and you say you need to get more busy. With getting things done. What are some of the things that you need that are on your to-do list in this short amount of time?
Well, two things that there's a lot. First of all, but in the drivers that we've had of what are the things that are important to us has kind of driven this whole administration. That I've had some wonderful cabinet members, and I can't give them enough thanks for everything that they've done. So we've looked at what do we need to do to preserve, what do we need to do to protect, and what do we need to do to develop? Because you constantly got to be moving, and so we're fortunate that in preservation, we've made great strides there. The cultural preservation staff in that department, in Interior, they focused a lot on both local and national issues. They have, listed, inventoried more than 250 cemeteries, within the Creek Nation, and so we have reclaimed a number of them, cleaned them up, fenced them, protected them. So that's been a big project for them. Being involved in what they call Section 106 reviews, where there's activity going on that requires cultural preservation to look at, are there any historic or ancestral sites there or archaeological sites. I've seen that grow from hundreds to where they may have almost 2,000 now that they have to keep track of, so the volume of their work has just expanded greatly, but it's important. And I think that what we've done nationally with Okmulgee Mounds, getting that legislation passed to expand it by 2,000 acres. Muskogee Youth Council have an agreement now to go back and have our youth work there in the summers and in the coming years. Those things I just need to make sure they're all complete so that next year rolls around, it's just going to be seamless. These things are ready to go. And so I'll be focusing on that. In developments, we've got several projects that we're working on, and I just need to make sure that that I can do everything I possibly can to line up the financing of it or the structuring of it, maybe purchase of land, finalizing details of what it's going to be, so that whoever follows me can have it pretty much laid out for them.
Kind of a smooth transition going in.
Just what I hope. Yes,
Yeah.
very smooth.
With one of the things that has been growing is I want to bring up is the reintegration program.
Yes.
Last week, as a matter of fact, they had like a little ribbon cutting ceremony where their old building, where they used to be housed at, was is now the new welding area.
Right.
They had some of the students that belong to that welding area with that. I guess they're in an 8-week course. Please explain how what does that mean to you? For seeing reintegration where where it began to how the impact that it's making now.
Right. Well, just in the past 4 years, just going from kind of an outpatient reentry program to one that is 24/7 with people living on campus, filling that out now with a training school. We're doing welding right now that can be expanded to other trades. Where the goal is to help our citizens get back in society and be contributing. And so we don't want them to return. So you look at the recidivism rates and you want to cut that down. We don't want people to go back and be incarcerated. So by assisting them with housing when they come out, and now not only jobs but training that gives them a skill that they can use. And I think welding's a good start, and they can make good money very quickly. And so I think that's a great deal. So to see that develop, I know you can't be 100% with people. That's just the way things are. I mean, some things are going to happen, and people are going to, fall off, and they may be, reincarcerated. But I think we've got a pretty good record, and I think this further develops that. I think we've gone probably further than any tribe that I've seen in what we do to help our citizens, and I'm very pleased with what they've done.
Recently, with all the floods that happened, with all the heavy rainfall, one of the areas that was affected was River Spirit Casino, and it to the point to where it had to be shut down for a little bit. Those numbers that you brought up, to 866 million, was that I guess an effect, or could it have been more if, like, at that time, River Spirit Casino wasn't shut down?
Well, in 2017, which we used the auditor records as,
Sorry.
we're just opening the hotel, and so we were just expanding. So usually 2018 will be higher, and then this one come out in 2 years. That will then show us the reflection of that. Now, regarding the flooding, if I can speak about that a little bit, we are working directly with FEMA. So we met with FEMA recently, and we had the option of going through the state, but we felt that, and a couple other tribes have gone directly with FEMA before. So looking at their experience and looking at the speed in which we can get money back from claims that we would submit, it was in our best interest to work directly with FEMA. So we are in the process of that now. We've met with them once. They've come down here as well, and several times now. And so we're looking at damage reports and expenses that we had to have to support, the nation and the people during that time. And so we hope that in turn will get us some resources back from FEMA fairly quickly, and help us to kind of replenish our funds that we used and during this time, essentially from May 1st to about June 15th to June 22nd, right about there.
With it, when you're saying it's the impact from what happened, you said that should come out in about 2 years?
Right. I mean, we will know probably the short-term effect soon, because they close financially each month on all our businesses, and so they close at different dates. So by August we'll know the impact that we had, the loss of revenue and the expenses. But in the overall impact picture will be probably 2 years when we do the financial impact, economic impact report for 2019. So, but I think that we were able to. First of all, we were pretty blessed and fortunate that we didn't sustain more damage than we did. We know that for citizens, particularly those around Sapulpa, Wagner County, Muskogee County, to some extent here in Okmulgee County, we had different patches, I guess, or pockets where they were hit harder than others. And we know that there were people displaced, whether they got flooded or not. Some of them had to pack up and leave because they were in areas that were threatened. So that was disruption, and some may have even lost their jobs because of the historic flooding that occurred. With River Spirit, we did close on May 22nd, because we knew that the level of water and the discharge from Keystone Dam was going to be increasing. So to protect what we had, we did close. We reopened last week. I think I forget the exact day, like the 20th, I believe. And back in business, people are back at work, and so it's that window of time from about the 20th of June and go back to May 22nd for the River Spirit. But other parts were impacted with other storms that hit before that hit citizens' homes.
Let's talk about Hickory Ground, Miko. What we've been, these cases and everything, and the situation that's going on there, it's been going on for quite a few years. Is there any updates that you could give to the citizens on Hickory Ground and what has been going on, or what will be going on from us?
Well, let me first of all talk about Hickory Ground and just the tragedy of it. because we just talked about the floods, and since that was a tragedy, but this one occurred, gosh, 180 years ago, when we had to leave. We had to leave Alabama and forcibly removed. We still remember that, and so the Hickory Ground in Wetumpka, Alabama, was there. People here knew, that's where we were, and then to see the people that we trusted to keep it secure didn't uphold their responsibilities. I mean, it's just like, another blow to you emotionally, traumatically, and everything else. And so you've got the practical reality that, the bones and remains were unearthed, but you also have the emotional trauma of it. I mean, that lingers today through, 4 or 5 generations later. And we've got to make sure people understand that, that wouldn't be tolerated if it was some other, historical site in a cemetery. I mean, everybody'd be in an uproar. But so we've got to bring that type of uproar attention to Hickory Ground, because that's our history. And it's hard as the chief to see people suffer emotionally from that, and that you're working on something to try to resolve it, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be resolved before I leave, and so it bothers me a lot. I'd like to see some settlement there, so that our people have some assurance that things are put back, and they're going to be protected, and things will be left alone. We need that assurance, and so unfortunately, we came to the point where we had to legally intervene with the court system with another tribe on that, and so totally support that. I wish we didn't have to come to that extent, but we did. But the message is pretty strong. We got to protect these sacred sites. That's a sacred site, and we'll do everything that we can to do that.
Recently also another decision or non-decision came to. I think everybody at Muskogee Media was waiting for this. It was a Supreme Court decision about Carpenter versus Murphy. Mm-hmm. I think, if I'm not mistaken, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. Also, they pushed it back, or they're going to wait till the fall to try and, I guess, open arguments again, or hear the case, and before they make their decision. What is when you saw that with the Supreme Court justices making that decision right there to hold off on it? What was going through your mind, and how did that make you feel?
Well, we were hoping for a decision because, and we were hoping for a favorable decision because I think that the facts point that direction for us. The non-decision, we're back to where we were almost a year ago, where we can't talk about the case because we're going to have to re-argue this probably in the fall at the Supreme Court level again, which is a fairly rare occurrence. They don't do this very often. We thought it was rare in December when they asked for additional, answers to questions that they had. So we thought, okay, now they got the answers, we'll have a decision. And then it was a waiting game. To the last day of the Supreme Court, they announced that this will be put on the calendar for the next session and will be re-argued. So, personally, I'm optimistic. It's, I think, an opportunity for us to go back to the court and retell the story, and I think that separates some of the myth from the facts here. So, we're looking forward to it, and we hope that October, November we'll be back up there again and be before the court and re-argue this. It's difficult in some ways for us because we're citizens of the Muskogee Nation. We're citizens of the state of Oklahoma as well. So at the end of the day, we all have to exist in the same location, almost as two different types of people. Mm-hmm. But we've done that since 1907, and we've been successful in doing that. So I don't see how people can think that Muskogee Creek Nation, if the decision was upheld and ruled in our favor, would change that. my opinion. But that's about the extent that I can talk about. We'll be back up there. We've got some very capable people assisting us, and I feel confident about that.
What's next for Chief Floyd after after your term's up? What retirement is it?
I don't know what retirement is. I don't think I tried that once, and we'll still be here. Carol and I and our family. We've given a lot, and we will continue. Just not full time. I'll put it that way. We have opportunities within our family members to do things that they want to do and their dreams, and we want to support them in that. And so we want to have the flexibility to do things that are priorities in our own family. But the tribe is always going to be in the forefront of my thinking every day, and I'll do everything I can to make sure we're successful. I want that. As the fourth largest tribe in the United States, we've got to be involved. Whether we just talked about nationally, they need to know that one of the biggest tribes in the United States is making a statement and making their voices heard and should have an impact on legislation. The state of Oklahoma, we should be doing the same thing with federal agencies. We've been involved. We need to even up our game there. So anything I can do to help, I'll be glad to do it. And otherwise, I think they said they already have a chair for me at the Okmulgee Elderly Nutrition Program, so I'll go there and have lunch with those folks. And just enjoy being a citizen. I really look forward to that.
During this time that you've been principal chief, do you feel the accomplishments, or do you feel like there's still more that needs to be done?
I've not really had time to reflect on a lot of things and the impact of them. To me, like I said, they're kind of practical. I make a list of things and you just kind of go down the list and what needs to be done. And there are things remaining to be done. So at some point in the future, then maybe I'll say, we did. I mean, we've done a lot of things. We put land in trust. Things we promised that we would do, I think that we hit upon. More land in trust. We purchased land for the nation. And I think the value of our holdings have increased. Businesses that may not have been successful, we've turned those around, and that's reflected in the revenue that's coming to the nation. We got a master plan in place that I want to continue to work on, secure more of the financing on that, and get that set up so that we can have new government buildings and other things, the Omniplex, cultural lands for us, and so those things I really look forward to.
Chief Floyd, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. I mean, I know as you said it's going to be busy for the next couple of months, but giving us that little bit of time to be able to talk about the impacts the Muskogee Creek Nation has been making, and and what you see is going on from now until the end of your term. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Gary, Darren. You guys have been with me, and I've tried to make time as well, and Jared, and so it's, you guys have been great to work with. Anytime you want me to come down, I'll make time to come down, and there's tough questions always to answer, but that's okay. That's what I'm supposed to do.